Three men at Stalag Luft 3 pulled off an impossible escape, a 125-foot tunnel dug beneath a vaulting horse. Howard and Clinton did the digging. Rowe ran the cover. It began when a newspaper spiraled up in a whirlwind and gave them the idea. The guards never suspected. But our story begins in the spring of 1943 at Stalag Luft 3. In the spring of 1943, Stalag Luft 3 in Sagan, Germany, held nearly 1,000 British and Allied airmen. Among them were Flight Lieutenant Peter Howard, a bomber observer shot down the previous December, and Captain John Clinton of the Royal Artillery, captured in the desert on the very same day. Both men were restless, tired of the endless circuit walks and the slow rot of captivity. They knew the camp's defenses were formidable, 2 barbed wire fences 12 feet high, floodlit at night, guarded by machine gun towers and patrolled by dogs. Yet every afternoon they walked the perimeter, talking escape. The old schemes had failed or been discovered, the washhouse tunnel, the accordion trick, and the Germans were growing complacent, confident no one would break out. Then one afternoon a whirlwind swept across the compound, lifting dust and debris high into the air. John Clinton watched a sheet of newspaper spiral up and vanish over the pines. In that moment an old idea resurfaced, the Trojan horse. He ran to find Peter Howard. "What about a vaulting horse?" he said. "We carry it out every day, dig a hole underneath, and one of us goes down while the others vault over it. The Germans might suspect a boxing match or a fake fight, but a gym horse, that was just British eccentricity." The escape committee, though skeptical, gave approval. Now they needed materials. A tinkerer in the camp, a wing commander with a hidden cache of tools, supplied plywood from Red Cross packing cases and bedboards for the frame. Peter Howard, with his pre-war experience in theater carpentry, designed a box 4 feet 6 inches high, 5 feet long, 3 feet wide. The sides were reinforced plywood. The top was padded with bedding and covered in white canvas. 4 slots were cut for lifting poles, so the horse could be carried like a sedan chair. In a few days, the horse was complete, light enough to lift yet strong enough to hold a man inside. They stored it in the camp canteen, and every afternoon a team of prisoners led by Nigel Wilde and Philip Rowe carried it out to a spot near the football pitch. The vaulting began in earnest. The team performed complicated jumps and falls, deliberately knocking the horse over so the guards could see it was empty. Inside, the men drilled how to lift the trap, how to dig the vertical shaft, how to stow the sand. The ferrets, the German security men in blue overalls, watched at first, then grew bored. Soon the horse became a familiar part of camp routine. A running joke. The prisoners laughed when a clumsy vaulter crashed into the side. The guards in the towers leaned on their elbows, waiting for the next miss. No one suspected that beneath that canvas top, a tunnel was about to begin. The impossible plan was in motion. By July 1943, the vaulting horse had become a familiar sight beside the football pitch. Each afternoon, the team carried it out, vaulted for 2 hours, and carried it back. Beneath it, a vertical shaft was sinking into the yellow sand. Howard and Clinton dug in shifts, naked and sweating in the cramped darkness, scraping the excavated sand into trouser leg bags. The bags hung from hooks inside the horse, and when all 12 were full, the vaulters carried the load back to the canteen along with the digger himself. The tunnel progressed, but slowly. The farther it ran from the shaft, the longer it took to drag the sand back to the surface, 40 feet in. The diggers were exhausted after filling just 12 bags. Howard proposed a new system. Both men would go down together, working head-to-head with a metal basin tied to a rope. One man dug at the face, the other pulled the loaded basin back to the shaft, filled bags, and signaled for more. The output nearly doubled, but the strain on the vaulters grew worse. That was when Rowe joined the team. As little X on the escape committee, he had organizing skills the operation needed. He would stay above ground, coordinating the vaulting rotations and the dispersal of sand. Under his methodical hand, the vaulters worked in scheduled teams, and the sand found its way into roofs, under floors, and across the tomato patches. The 3 of them settled into a rhythm. 2 hours of digging each morning, 2 hours of sand removal each afternoon, day after day through the Silesian summer. In September, the routine nearly collapsed. The sand stored in the canteen ceiling was discovered by the ferrets during a routine search. The dispersal team escaped through windows and joined a choir mid-song, but the Germans tore up the barbershop floor looking for the tunnel entrance. They found sand, but not the shaft. Howard and Clinton acted fast. They carried their remaining bags to Hut 64, where a separate tunnel was being dug, and dumped them in its roof. When the ferrets found that tunnel, they assumed all the sand belonged to it. The horse was not connected to the search, and the team resumed digging after a week of cautious rest. Enjoying the story? Subscribe to join us for the next one. By late October, the tunnel had reached 125 feet, far beyond the wire. The final 10 feet would have to be moled, pushed upward through the last layer of sand with no shoring, no light, and very little air. On the morning of the 29th, Clinton went down after lunch, sealed in by the trap, carrying the kit bags and the trowel. He worked alone for hours, digging the rising passage, banking the sand behind him as he went. Howard and Rowe would join him after the afternoon appel, with a small vaulting team member named McKay to close the trap behind them. At 6 o'clock that evening, the diversion began. Prisoners in the huts nearest the wire blew trumpets, sang and banged the walls, shouting at the top of their voices. Under cover of the noise, Clinton broke through the last crust of sand. He pulled himself out, dragging his kit bag toward the shallow ditch beyond the sentry path. Howard followed, then Rowe. No shots were fired, no alarms sounded. The three of them lay in the ditch, hearts pounding, then picked up their bags and ran across the road into the pine forest. They left the tunnel outfits in a heap with pepper to mask the scent from the dogs, then doubled back toward the railway. At the station, Clinton bought tickets to Frankfurt without incident. The train was running late, but no sirens sounded from the camp. By 7:30, they were standing in a crowded corridor, the telegraph poles flashing past in the darkness, the prison camp falling away behind them with every mile. The forged papers that the escape committee had prepared for them, identity cards as French workers, a police travel permit, and a transfer letter from a Breslau factory, passed their first test at the Frankfurt barrier without a second glance. They found no hotel that would take foreign laborers, so they slept in a ditch outside town, shivering through the October night. By dawn, they caught a local train east to Küstrin, then another north toward Stettin, their papers checked twice more without challenge. Stettin was a gray port city under blackout, the Baltic wind carrying the smell of coal smoke and salt. The two men spent days walking the docks, watching for Swedish freighters that never seemed to arrive. Clinton made contact with a Corsican barber named Joe Lacourse, who worked among the French forced laborers in the port. Through this chain of wary introductions, they met André, a French resistance organizer who tested their credibility with a sudden, open-handed slap across Howard's face. Howard lunged before he could stop himself, and André, satisfied that no German agent would react that way, agreed to help. Jojo continued his work with the French resistance and survived the war. André arranged passage on a Danish freighter, the S.I. Norensen, which carried eggs and cargo between Stettin and Copenhagen. A young Danish deckhand named Sigmund Helm Jensen met them outside the Café Schiff, handed them forged dock passes, and led them through the Freihafen gates one at a time. The guards waved them through without interest. Sigmund walked them up the gangplank and stowed them in the forecastle, where a heavy-bodied boatswain named Lorentzen greeted them with a bottle of schnapps and a slab of fried eggs and bacon. Before the ship could sail, a German search party came aboard with dogs and orders to find stowaways. Lorentzen shoved Howard and Clinton into a cramped cubbyhole in the forepeak, a triangular space no bigger than a wardrobe, cold and smelling of paint and tar. The Germans clomped into the forecastle, their boots loud on the deck above, and Lorentzen met them with passed schnapps and booming laughter. The soldiers drank, looked around, and left without opening the panel. When the engine rumbled to life and the Norensen slipped her moorings, the two men sat in the dark, still not daring to believe they had made it out of Germany. The storm caught the Norensen soon after she cleared Swinemünde. In the pitch black of the anchor locker, Howard and Clinton were slammed against steel plates as the old freighter pitched and rolled. Seawater and engine oil sloshed in the bilges, filling the confined space with a stench that turned their stomachs. They were sick until they had nothing left, and still the ship groaned on through the Baltic gale. By dawn, the sea had eased, and the Norensen continued to Copenhagen. There, Sigmund hid the three stowaways ashore for 2 days before they re-embarked for the ship's onward voyage to Oslo. Inside the 3-mile limit of Swedish waters near Stromstad, a pilot boat came alongside. One by one, the two men climbed down a rope ladder into the heaving boat, cold, exhausted, and free. Swedish police held them overnight in Stromstad, then sent them to Stockholm, where they spent 7 weeks in limbo waiting for repatriation. Andre parted ways with him in Stromstad, collected by a contact from the French network. His ultimate fate remained unknown to Howard and Clinton. The days passed in squash games, sauna baths, and long dinners in the city's restaurants, a strange anticlimax after the tunnel and the chase. After the Norensen completed her Oslo run and returned to Copenhagen, Sigmund was arrested by the Gestapo and held in West Prison for a month. His stepmother, who had worked as a children's nurse in Germany before the war, recognized an old friend in the Gestapo officer interrogating her son. She secured his release. Howard and Clinton finally flew home to England in late December, landing at Leukers in a drizzle. Rowe had already made it home separately via Danzig, arriving before the others. The wooden vaulting horse was placed in the German Escape Museum at the Kommandantur, a trophy of a scheme that should never have worked. Howard returned to the Air Force and wrote the story of the escape. Clinton went back to his regiment. Wilde remained in the camp and was liberated in 1945. Wings Cameron remained a prisoner until the camp was liberated in 1945. His role in the escape never discovered. The tunnel remains a testament to the simple truth that determination and patience can defeat even the most elaborate security. If you have family stories or memories from this era, we would be glad to hear them in the comments. Please subscribe and give this video a like to support our historical documentaries. Thank you for listening.